This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can visit their store by using my referral link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Nitsahone, and it's Monday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. It is the week of Thanksgiving here in the United States, so I chose a festive topic for today's MTG Top 10 where we'll be taking a look at food. As is true with most holidays, Thanksgiving involves a large indulgent meal, so food made sense as a topic. In Magic, food is represented by artifact tokens that gain you 3 life if you pay 2 mana and sacrifice them. In addition to having this effect, there are also lots of cards out there that let you cash in food for other abilities. Food originally made its debut in 2019's Throne of Eldraine, and it has also since returned in 2021's Modern Horizons 2. To be eligible for this list, a card had to be able to make a food token or have the food type. This means that there were 36 cards eligible for this list, and in this video we'll take a look at the 10 that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. Even though there aren't a ton of cards out there that make food tokens or have the food type, food has been a successful mechanic overall, with it showing up in multiple formats since the mechanic debuted in 2019. Before we get started, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A first tier top 8 is worth 2 points, and that's events like Pro Tours, Set Championships, Mythic Championships, and a second tier top 8 is worth 1 point, and that's events like Magic Fests and Grand Prix. Before we get into the list, I want to tell you about this video's special sponsor, Into the AM. They've been nice enough to sponsor these top 10s pretty regularly over the last few months, and they have a special Black Friday sale going on right now, so what better time to tell you about that than in this Thanksgiving-inspired video. Into the AM is, of course, an apparel company with a lot of great clothing, including graphic tees, like this one I'm wearing now. A lot of the shirts I've shown you in the past have been brightly colored designs, but if that's not your thing, they've got some more understated ones too, like this one, called the Passage Tee. It features some simple line art that really reminds me of the model of a black hole, which I think looks pretty cool. They have a Black Friday sale going on from now until December 5th, and everything on their site is marked down anywhere from 20 to 80% off, and if you use my special referral link, which you can find in the description, you'll get an additional 10% off. I highly recommend you check out their store as the products are great, and the sale going on right now is awesome. Alright, let's get started with our list. At number 10, it is Late to Dinner. Late to Dinner is a nice reanimation spell for white that gives you a food token. Getting that food can really matter, as sometimes when you finally reanimate your creature, you've taken enough of a beating that gaining that additional life can help make sure you survive. It was printed in Modern Horizons 2, so it hasn't been legal in Pioneer, Standard, or Historic, but it's a common, and a pretty nice one. And as a result, it's already seen some significant play in Pauper, in particular in Ephemerate decks, which seek to abuse creatures with Enter the Battlefield abilities, and reanimating a creature is another way to get additional instances of those triggers. Late to Dinner looks like it has a good chance at gaining more points in Pauper going forward. At number 9, it is Tireless Provisioner. This creature comes with a very nice landfall ability that lets you choose between a treasure or food token, and that's a nice choice to have. If you need mana or fixing, you obviously go for the treasure, and oftentimes later in the game, the food is going to be more useful at helping you stabilize. That's all pretty nice on a reasonably statted creature. This is another Modern Horizons 2 card, so it's never been legal in formats like Standard, Historic, or Pioneer, but it has managed to already gain points in Modern, where it's gained points in Glimpse of Tomorrow decks, which attempt to use the Cascade mechanic to easily cast the Glimpse early. The deck is loaded up with cards that give you multiple permanents to maximize what you get back when you cast the Glimpse, and the Provisioner fits in really well there, since every land you play will also give you an additional permanent. Glimpse of Tomorrow decks seem pretty legit in Modern right now, so it's likely the Provisioner will gain more points going forward. At number 8, it is Golden Egg. It doesn't produce food. Instead, it is food. Like a lot of eggs, it is a cantrip that can filter your mana when you sacrifice it, but because it's food, you can also pay 2 and sacrifice it to gain 3 life. In Standard, it gained its points in Doom Foretold decks. To fully take advantage of that card, those decks like to run lots of permanents to sacrifice to Doom Foretold to make the card one-sided. Many Standard Doom Foretold decks also had Yorion as a companion, which gives the egg some extra value since you get to draw a card when you blink it. The deck also has a single point in Pauper, where it's being played in Boros Metalcraft decks, which are aggressive decks with a bunch of artifact stuff going on. It isn't in Standard anymore, of course, but it seems like it has a future in Pauper. At number 7, it is the Underworld Cookbook, another Modern Horizons 2 card. It comes with the ability to generate food tokens if you tap it and discard a card, and it can return a creature from your graveyard to your hand. If that's all this card was, it would be pretty good. However, it's even better than that because of the powerful card Asmarano Mardica Daistina Koldakar, which searches the card up and then provides a great way to utilize the food that it can generate. Giving up a couple of tokens to make creatures do 6 damage to themselves is pretty amazing, especially because it costs no mana at all. And yeah, she can only be cast for a single black-red hybrid mana and only if you've discarded a card on your turn, but that's easy enough to set up, and the Cookbook can actually do it on its own. The Cookbook and Asmarano Marta Daistina Koldakar helped spawn a powerful food deck in Modern, and the Cookbook has actually also managed a single point of its own in Legacy Helm of Obedience. The Cookbook looks like it has a good chance to gain more points going forward. At number 6, it is Gingerbrute, another card that doesn't make food, instead it is food. It's also a pretty decent little creature as a 1-mana 1/1 with haste that can make itself unblockable in most situations. And of course, it can cash itself in for 3 life like all food can. In Standard, it was played in Selesnya Aura decks that look to get the most possible out of all that glitters. The Gingerbrute could simultaneously increase the boost given by the aura, and it was a great place to put the aura because it was so hard to block. It's also found significant success in Pioneer and Soul artifact decks, which are artifact-heavy aggro decks where, once again, the Brute is a great place to stick an aura. The Brute looks well positioned to gain more points in Pioneer going forward. At number 5, it is Feasting Troll King. This is a guy you really don't want to be inviting to your Thanksgiving dinner. The Troll King is a monstrous 6-mana 7/6 with Vigilance and Trample, and he brings 3 food tokens along for the ride. Then if he dies, you can cash that same food in to bring him back to the battlefield. Now, they made sure you only get food if you cast it from your hand, so you can't just keep doing that. However, if your deck has other ways to make food, you certainly can. In Standard, the Troll King was played in Gruul and Mono Green aggro decks. It's also gained a few points in Modern food decks alongside the Underworld Cookbook, though it isn't exactly a staple in that deck. Still, like a lot of cards on this list, it has some real potential to continue to gain points in the future. At number 4, it is Trail of Crumbs. This enchantment gives you a food token when it comes down, and then it really makes your food way better, since you can pay an additional colorless mana when you sacrifice them to draw a permanent from among the top 2 cards of your library. That generates some serious card advantage, especially because the decks that run the Trail have a whole lot of food in them. In Standard, the Trail found its way into food decks, of course, but also Jund sacrifice decks, which also utilized food alongside things like Mayhem Devil to generate even more value when you sacrifice them. In addition to being a key card in Standard food, it's also been played in Historic and Modern food decks. It's going to continue to gain points, but so are all the cards in front of it, so I'm not sure it will ever move up this list. At number 3, it is Witch's Oven, an artifact that lets you sacrifice a creature to get a food token. And if your creature has 4 or more toughness, you get 2 food tokens. The Oven famously combined with Cauldron Familiar to form the core of a variety of Black, Red, and Jund sacrifice decks in both Standard and Historic. If you have them both in play, you can sacrifice the Familiar to the Oven and then sacrifice the food to get the Familiar back every single turn, giving you some serious inevitability. And a creature that can just come back and block every single turn. And keep in mind, this was also a deck running lots of other sacrifice payoffs like the Mayhem Devil we saw a moment ago, and that means you were generating all kinds of additional value every time you did this, since you were sacrificing 2 permanents each time. The deck was so powerful in Standard that Cauldron Familiar was ultimately banned in the format in August of 2020. It's also gained points in Historic and Pioneer sacrifice and Modern food decks. It has a good shot at gaining more points going forward. At number 2, I have Gilded Goose, one of my favorite Magic cards of all time, and a mana dork that needs food to produce the mana, and it also has the ability to generate food tokens on its own, including one when it enters the battlefield. Mana dorks are always great. Being able to play your 3-mana card on turn 2 is a pretty serious advantage. Both aggro and control decks tend to like a card like this, as both decks are very interested in accelerating their mana in the early game. While the bulk of its points have come in Standard, it's also seen significant play outside of it. In Pioneer, all its points have come in Simic aggro decks. In Modern, it's being played in food decks. In Historic, it's gained all of its points in Jund Sacrifice. And in Legacy, it's gained all of its points in Bug Midrange. It's going to continue to gain points, like pretty much all the cards on this list. And at number 1, it is Oko, Thief of Crowns, which has got to be one of the most predictable number 1 cards ever in an MTG top 10. Oko is perhaps the first card you think of when you think of food in Magic, as he's pretty insane. Oko is one of the most maligned cards released in the last couple of years, and that's because he turned out to be way too powerful. His abilities are all great, and he's only 3 mana. His +1 is really the most powerful one, as you can use it to turn your opponent's best creature or artifact into a vanilla 3/3, which is usually a pretty big downgrade, and you can also use it on your own stuff, like the food Oko makes to turn things into better permanents. Then his -5 allows you to exchange control of things, like by giving them your food for something better of theirs. Oko was a huge problem and has been played in every single format. He was the most overpowered in Standard, where he was only legal for about 2 months and yet managed to gain 60 points in the format. The peak of his Standard dominance came between August 8th and 10th when he was in 18 of the 24 decks to top 8 Premier events. He was ultimately banned out of Standard, Pioneer, Historic, Modern, Legacy, and even Brawl. These days, he is still legal in Vintage, but he sees a ton of play there, and he's going to continue to gain a bunch of points. So despite all those bans, I think Oko will hold on to the #1 slot on this list for the foreseeable future. Well, those are the 10 food cards that have found the most success at Magic's highest level of competition. If you want to get any of these food cards for Thanksgiving, check out the description where you'll find direct Card Kingdom links for every card in this video. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you stay aware of future MTG Top 10s, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. And if you want to catch up on past MTG Top 10s, and there are over 420 of them, you should see some playlists on your screen shortly. Lastly, if you want to go the extra mile in your support for the channel, you can do that on Patreon. Thanks for watching.